can you see this person's perspective, but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
We're not in a victim mindset. Today, we're talking about loneliness, and loneliness made me do it. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship that was not nourishing, did not benefit you, was downright toxic because you were so afraid to leave because you were lonely? It also ties in with October being Domestic Violence Month. We're going to talk about how loneliness drives us into toxic situations. Teri's joining us. Don't worry, she's here. So just let's start out with this video to kind of give us an idea. It's sent to us from the YWCA Domestic Violence Program. It is October, and it's something to be aware of every year at this time.
I am so blessed to be alive today. I thought my life was over. I never thought that I would see 2021. The very first time Tavares became abusive, I was 9 months pregnant with our first child together. He was leaving to go hang out with friends. I followed him to the door just to simply go lock the door. When he opened up the door, they had the headlights on, so I couldn't see. I wasn't even trying to look, but he turned around and smacked me so hard, I hit the floor. And he walked out the door. He had dropped me off at the laundromat, and I was struggling because it was a big, full hamper. It was another man that saw me struggling with this big old belly, and he asked if he could help me. I hurried up and said no, because I knew that Tavares was gonna get mad. And as soon as I got in the car, he was like, "You just too cute for your own good," and started punching me in my face and was like, "Nobody's gonna want you after today, that's a promise." He would beat me and pull off my clothes and say he was gonna call his homeboys over so they can do the same thing to me again, making me relive my past. And I knew then, I was like, this ain't love. This man hates me and I don't understand why. He, out of the blue, said he was gonna leave. He knew I was miserable. He haven't saw me smile in years, and I was so happy, but I didn't show it. Do what you gotta do. And he was like, "So you want another man to raise my kids? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me out so somebody else can come in." And he began to fight. He left. I called the police. He got pulled over. He went to jail. He said, "If you don't go to court, I promise I'm gonna leave you alone." And he stayed away for like a year, almost a year. So I hadn't seen him in a while. It was Christmas. Little did I know he was following me. That night, the kids were sleeping. I took them upstairs one by one into my apartment. And when I got ready to go back out the door, he came out of my kitchen. And my heart dropped because I know that look. And from that point on, it was 3 days of pure hell. He said, "You're not coming out of this alive. You will die today." And so he began to beat me up, stomp me, kick me, punch me, drag me upstairs, sliced my face, cut my hair. At one point, he gave me the gun and he told me to put it in my mouth and pull the trigger. This is how I knew it would end, because it wasn't hurting anymore. Next thing I know, I heard paramedics, and they had told me that Miracle, my 3-year-old daughter, was the one who saved my life. I was shocked. Miss Miracle went next door to the neighbor and said, "My daddy is killing my mama," and he called the police.
When women come to us to
Hello there.
I'm trying. Here we are. That story is riveting, and it kicks off how dangerous it is to let loneliness dictate. Let me see. I'll get you on your other camera. Okay. Now we got you.
We got you. We got you.
I am totally trying to turn that thing off, but it is not having it.
I
Thank
got
you.
you.
I heard you. You got me.
I do. I got you. Okay. Well, Teri, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
You had an adventure, and we're going to find out a little bit about that. But first, this is Domestic Violence Month, and I thought starting out with the idea of loneliness made me do it because there's so many people who stay in a toxic, in a wrong, in a bad situation because they're so scared of being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you hear it because for the nature of what you do, I'm sure that you've ended up with people and they go, I can't leave because then what will I do?
Well, loneliness tends to cripple us. It's self-perceived loneliness. We can be lonely in a crowd of people. We know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a relationship, we can be isolated. We can feel incredibly lonely. We can have family and friends who try to help but wane off because the person that we're in a relationship with demands sole proprietorship, basically, over our energy, period.
Wow. It hit me right in my core because I've had so many people in my friend group, people that I know, and I go, first of all, the question that everybody hates, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave? And we've got a lot of folks who join us today. Elizabeth is with us and Wayne is with us. And Wayne is teasing us saying we're doing the remix. I got you. We got you.
That's right.
Yeah. And Alicia also joins us. Great and necessary topic. And now not all are as bad as the story that we just heard. Not all of them are as bad, but there are those situations of abuse that are hurtful. And I want to say, first of all, it's not just men who abuse women, because it's 1 in every 3 women have been in a domestic violence situation. 1 in 3, but 1 in 4 men. That's huge to note. And we are not saying casting blame. Okay, it's all the men who are bad. No. Because I've had several friends who are male who go, I have nothing I can do, no recourse. I can't even defend myself because I'll be put in jail. You know,
exactly.
What do you tell someone?
And it is a hot topic, and it is. Go ahead.
What do you tell someone when they come to you describing a situation that is toxic and they're afraid to leave because of loneliness?
Well, we discern whether or not it's loneliness or is it a fear of safety, a fear of retaliation from the other person. Because most of the time, loneliness plays a role in it. Loneliness can get us into the situation, but there's nothing, loneliness isn't even as strong as feeling unwanted. Those are 2 completely different things. And you can be in a relationship with someone and feel completely disregarded and unwanted. And that is crippling. So that compounds the feeling of, I don't have anyone that can help. Most of the time that boils down to a fear of their own well-being, a fear for their children, a fear for their pets.
Ooh, that was me.
Yeah.
Be honest. Alicia, her story, I was right there in 1966. My first marriage resulted in leaving and living for a year on the streets with my toddler son. Leaves forever lasting mental scars and deficiencies. Oh, Alicia, so sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Elizabeth, I'm so grateful I found the strength to leave. I don't know how I did. I just knew I had to. Alicia talks about the fear. I was too afraid to leave until he was arrested on robbery charges, imprisoned, and couldn't find me.
Exactly. And that's in large a part of it is knowing that your safe enough to leave,
Mm-hmm.
that someone can't follow or find you. And it takes courage to do that. And it doesn't, there's no hierarchy here in whether or not you're verbally abused, mentally abused, physically abused, spiritually abused, financially abused, sexually abused. They all rank in their own rights, but abuse is abuse is abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are trapped and all of your, when I say intimacies, I mean your friendships, your family ships, your ability to use the phone when you want to. Like the young lady said in the video before, she was simply going to shut the door, and her partner at the time turned around and just hit her for no reason other than he could, you know. and
Mm.
and whether it's a man or a woman, this is not about a gender, a race, anything. This is about abuse and how
Yes.
domestic abuse is incredibly deadly, and it's a very brave person that can make it out. And the irony in that is when they make it out, many times they don't feel brave at all.
You're exactly right. You are exactly right. I think the time to look and is our next relationships. Look into our next ones, and we're going to talk in the solution a little bit about when we are our loneliness. It's like, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry.
Right, right.
How do we get rid of the loneliness before we start working on finding a relationship? Because sometimes we get into bad relationships, whether it's domestic violence or just the wrong relationship, and we settle for less than something nourishing and good and healthy because we are lonely. We just go, okay. I used to call it, and I was working on a book. Sandy Knox and I were working on a book called Last Man Before Expressway. It's like, and I have all these stories of these women who had told me their stories about how they ended up in these relationships. And they weren't domestic violence relationships. They were just stupid ones. I mean, let's just face it. We all do crazy, stupid things because I go, oh, well, he'll do if I close my eyes and squint, you know, or whatever.
Well, and here's the thing with the loneliness, a part of that loneliness is perpetuated by feelings of being undesirable and no one wanting us. And when we're in an abusive relationship, um, our vision becomes skewed on our reality. So we can't necessarily always have clear vision to go, okay, wait a minute. I can see that this is happening to my friend and I don't know why she's putting up with this, but we're in the same thing and we don't see. Our lens is a bit foggy. And some of that is because our primal, um, one of our primal core needs is survival. And we will sell our soul for that survival until we see the window is cracked. And then we'll take our soul back and we'll fight like hell to get through that cracked window.
Yes, absolutely. Teri, you're right on target. Alicia says, she says, hand raised, present. Greg McDougall joins us. Hi, Greg. How are you? So great to see you last night, Greg. We were at a benefit last night helping foster children. And Elizabeth says, I left and lost nearly every single one of my friends. It's been over 25 years, and those friends never came back. I decided they weren't really friends.
Yeah.
That's another thing, is that we will fill up our lives, that emptiness that we have within us, with the wrong crowds of people. It's not just one. And finding ways to fill that, I always call it the God-shaped hole within us, that will never be filled with a person.
Well, we have to be exactly. We have to know what nourishes our soul. what feeds our soul. And sometimes there's some scar tissue over that lens because it comes from our life experiences. But before we can, well, I mean, we all know, and hey, I've been there. I have jumped from the relationship to the other relationship because that one didn't work and wasn't working, and this one looks better. And I don't know, I just ended this relationship, or they ended this relationship, and you know, I don't want to be alone. So I was in another relationship. Well, apparently, I mean, over a period of time, I realized, not only am I choosing unhealthy partners, I'm the damn problem. I'm the one choosing, you know. And it takes that comfortable, getting cozy with yourself and going, you know what? I've made some not so great decisions for myself, but I'm willing to sit with this feeling of being not enough and being lonely until I convince myself that that in fact is an untruth. And when we do that work, an amazing thing happens. The people that are better suited for us start to show up. Friendships, healthier family members, healthier co-workers, healthier relationships. We look at ourselves different in the mirror. And at first, when we're in that relationship that beats us down physically and every other way, we're terrified to look in that mirror and believe that anything could be any better, because in the beginning of that relationship, they saw the sun and the stars in us. So it must be us that has gone sour in this, not them. And that is a huge lie that we tell ourselves.
Man, y'all, that was so rich. That's when you need to sit there with your little notebook and write some of this stuff down, because truthfully, that is, and we do start telling a lie. I was with a therapist years and years and years ago, and she says, well, what do you want? And I go, what do you mean, what do I want? I want someone to love me. I want this, blah, blah, blah. No, what do you want out of your life? Not what someone else can bring to your life. What do you want in your life? Whether it's what you want to do every day, what do you want? And it took me about a decade to answer that question. A decade. And man, it's really something. Elizabeth, yes, I called it my black hole and couldn't be filled until I learned many lessons. I found out it's easy to be very lonely in a sea of people. Just because I'm alone, it doesn't mean I'm lonely anymore. It's a shift that happens somewhere along the way. Not without effort,
absolutely. Right. And I tell people all the time, all of us have been that person at some point in our life where we're in the crowded room full of people and we're screaming at the top of our lungs. I need help. I need support. I need this. I need that. Please hear me. Please see me. And people go around like you're invisible. And most of those people that we're surrounding ourselves are ill-equipped to show up for their own self, let alone to show up for us. So it is our responsibility as human beings to learn how to not only self-nurture, self-care, and then call bullshit on ourselves when we're failing ourselves, because we can be in relationships that are unhealthy, but that doesn't mean that when we're out of that relationship, we have to be lonely.
Right. Alicia says, I'm more at peace alone now than I ever was in a relationship. Peace is an important thing. That was the answer to my question when she says, what do you want? Took me a decade to find peace. Peace was my thing. I go, I want peace. And I can, and sometimes we find ways, we choose chaos.
Well, chaos is a great traveling companion. It's a great traveling companion for fear, for anxiety. Chaos is a wonderful traveling companion to keep us small, because if we're distracted by everything else, we can't really look at what we want. When I work with people and they say, well, I want to be happy, the very next thing I ask them is, give me your definition of happiness. What is that? Because people will say, I just want to be loved. Well, if you come from a family where love is pushing and shoving and shut up and da 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 da, I'll show you you, then the big kumbaya, their definition of love is. But the truth is, everyone has a different definition based on, one, their life experiences, two, how they were, what was modeled to them growing up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and three, how they've come to embrace what their expectation is, because we teach people how to treat us. And, and a lot of times that's because we want to be loved.
Lucretia says, toxicity is not for me. Took 2 decades to learn that lesson. And you know what? The cool thing is we don't have a time limit. So took 20 years. Okay. All right. Sometimes that is what it takes. Elizabeth says, definitely takes effort, therapy, AA, loads of work, but also very worth it. Doing the work. Finally got what I needed for a change. It's all good now, Lucretia says. Now, this is a good thing. It's a good statement. I have no idea what reciprocal love is. Okay, let's open that package.
Right. So first and foremost, when we are looking for or attracting any relationship in our life, we have to be willing to be able to reciprocate that back. So if we're not getting that back from someone, if you're turning the faucet on and ketchup's coming out, there's something wrong. So we have to turn the faucet off and look within ourselves. Is this something I want to live with?
Right.
Is this something that will change? Is this something? Here's where we really put our boot up our butt. Well, if I can just help them learn this, they will be such a happier person. It is not your responsibility. Is it our responsibility to support and, and be there and be a confidant and a friend and all of that to, our significant others and friends and family? Yes, as long as we're not being abused in return.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get into that mindset of that, I can just change them. Or, you know what, in the beginning, it was really sweet, but now we've got 3 months behind us and it's not so sweet anymore. But in the beginning, it was really sweet. But now we've got 5 years behind us and it's really not sweet anymore. But I remember a long time ago, in the beginning, it was really sweet. You're probably never going to get back to that sweet again unless you choose to leave that environment. And that requires, in many cases, as this young lady, in the video ahead, or we listened to in the beginning, that requires a plan. And sometimes we can't see clearly enough that that our life is in danger. I've worked with people who will say, "Oh yeah, they've pulled guns on me before, but they would never do anything."
They didn't mean that.
Yeah, they were just in a really bad place, and I'm like, no, sister or brother, you were in a really bad place because you were on the other end of that gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be able to remove yourself. And I know there are such extremes here, but again, we're not comparing situations and circumstances. Abuse is abuse.
Let's talk about the nonviolent, emotional eroding of a human spirit. And those are the ones it's kind of hard to leave, because you can't walk into a judge and say, I need out of this. Here are the bruises. Here's the proof of this. Here's whatever. Because emotional erosion, it doesn't always show.
And that's why the abuser does it. Because it doesn't show. Because people in abuse, toxic partners they don't set out to break your heart. They set out to obliterate your spirit. They set out to destroy you as a human. Mm-hmm. They don't set out to go, oh, I want them to leave me and be heartbroken and look back and go, oh, it would have been so great. Many times when people find their way out of a toxic relationship, their knees and their hands and their elbows and their feet are sharded are bleeding from shards of wounds that they have literally had to fight their way, hypothetically and literally, figuratively, through hell to get out of that. And while you're sitting there healing, sometimes if you don't have a pocket that has retained one morsel of your value, of your confidence, you can't find it. You flipped all those pockets inside out, and it's not there because the abuser strategically polished you down to a nub emotionally.
Wow.
You can get that back, but you don't want back what you had with them. You want the 2.0 version of yourself, because that version of yourself will not attract another person like that.
Boy, that's so important. So important. Let's talk about the build back when you are starting to find and attract the new relationships. Just give up on the idea of relationship until you have the relationship with yourself right. Let's just start there.
Amen.
You until you have a good relationship with yourself, you will never have a good, healthy relationship with someone else, because you take your unhealthy you into them. You're expecting someone else to fill your bucket. And that is, in essence, called loneliness. But what it is, it's, I don't want to do my work.
Well, and if you're attracting someone who doesn't want to do the work and you're not doing your work, then the depth of your loneliness just got twice as deep, because they're not going to be able to show up emotionally regulated or balanced to be a good partner. I'm not saying there won't be moments of, oh, this is really nice, or that was really sweet. But as we're being responsible and good stewards of this gift of life, looking at the panoramic view of it and going, okay, I'm going to be real with myself. We've had 2 really sweet moments, but we've had 98 horrible fights that have been abusive. That does not make it okay.
No, absolutely. Elizabeth, not all partners will be toxic. I found my soulmate, and it was something we both worked at, both wanted, and both made the effort for each other. I'm not with my soulmate now, but I did learn that not all relationships are toxic. Now, here's the deal is, and I learned this is from, this is a Teri tool. Not every relationship is forever. Sometimes they are for a season. Learning from those relationships is good, and they can be a soulmate that comes along, and the two of you, iron sharpens iron. You learn from it and you move on and go, that season is done, but I don't look back in malice. I don't look back that they're toxic. Beautiful point, Elizabeth. That is important to take with this. Not every relationship is meant to be forever.
Exactly. And you can be in a relationship with someone that's toxic, and their level of toxic might be elementary, but they're still toxic. And you have to decide, when you're attracting this person, or when you recognize that, if you're in a relationship and you recognize the toxicity, then at least put forth the effort to reconcile differences, to see what maybe you're just misunderstanding one another. But that's a whole different level than someone who is in a domestic abusive relationship. Misunderstanding one another is like, hey, let's just sit down and talk this through. You can't do that with an abuser, because they don't want you to ever have any leverage or equity in the relationship. They need control, and they can say all the sweet things to keep you there, but if they're not showing up with you with equity in that relationship as an equal partner, then you're not an equal partner.
This is some good deep stuff. Alicia brings up, but isn't it sad to never have a lifelong loving relationship? Okay, now that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying never have a loving one, but some relationships come along, and I have friends that shall remain nameless that love their ex-spouse. They are friends to this day. The ex-spouse comes into town. They have family Christmases together. They bring their kids in and whatever. They get along great. Neither one of them have remarried, but they love each other. There are good relationships that are not meant to be together every day. Understand what those relationships are and say, what is this? How did this enrich my life? How did I enrich theirs? Answer the question. Oh, I love this one, Lucretia. I divorced my husband because I was the only one pulling the load. I guess I got his attention because now he's doing the work. We're back together after a 3-year hiatus. Very happy now. He appreciates me. And I love both of them. They're both in that picture together. I love them with a bunch of jewelry. And I watched this love cultivate. But you know what? They both separated and did their own work.
And that's exactly, when I said you bring it to the table. Is this something we need to work on? Sometimes it means that there's a heavy hand laid down and we call it. I mean, call a spade, right? It's like, okay, this isn't working. And that person will go, oh gosh, I have feared doing this work. I have feared knowing myself, but I actually love this person enough that I'm going to dip my toes into that. And I'm going to try that. And then together, you're able to be vulnerable. You still want to throat punch each other every once in a while. We're human beings. You still have to act on it. You grow together. And yes, and here's the thing. We can always have a long-term loving relationship if we love ourselves. And if we love ourselves truly to that point of, it's not about needing another person to share life with. It's about attracting someone who can reciprocate that back. And that, was well said earlier. You have to be able to, that person has to be able to reciprocate that back. Mm-hmm. And we don't take time these days to really get to know people at all. I mean, right. it's like 3 or 4 dates and then they're, we're getting married and we're moving in. And hey, I'm not knocking it. If you find that person, great. But I can tell you this. I see more people that say, oh my God, we were soulmates. That was just, boom, it was made, it was meant to be. And then 6 months into that marriage or that relationship, it's like, I mean, like for real, how many red flags can I dismiss in a day? And I'm like, you got to stop dismissing them because that's just the universe or God or whatever going, hey, pump those brakes a minute. And how much of you are you trading off in order to fill their happiness bucket or to fill their needs? Because we trade ourselves to nothing.
I think it was you that told me about a married couple, and they lived down the street from each other because one didn't like the way one kept house. One didn't like one's furniture. And this is what I like. But they stayed married and they stayed and they dated in their marriage.
They're friends of mine, and I've known them for over 35 years, and they've been married for probably 25 of those years, and they tried living in a house together. And I don't like the way he chooses food, but I love him, and I don't like the way she cleans house, but I love her. And they bought houses less than a mile apart from each other, same side of the street. And they have raised children, they have grandchildren, and they have great-grandchildren. And it works for them. And in a conventional world, we might go, well, that just doesn't make sense. But it works for them. They're happy. They love having, we'll have dinner at your place and breakfast at your place, and we'll share, and it works for them. So, just because you may be in a relationship that is, doesn't seem like the typical type relationship, but we got to find what works for us. And
absolutely.
That means also knowing ourselves, knowing that if we're a chameleon, then here's the first thing. When I was in my early 20s, if somebody said to me, what is your favorite type of music? My answer typically was, well, music. And it's true. I can't really, I probably like classic rock or 70s music, overall. But here's the thing. If I dated somebody that liked jazz, oh, honey, I could tell you everything there was to know about jazz. I love jazz. I could listen to jazz all day long. If I dated somebody that liked Dean Martin, oh, jazz, well, it's okay, but I love me some Dean Martin now. You know, if you find yourself compromising, you know, oh, I'm going to cut all my hair off. Oh, I don't like you with short hair. I like you with long hair better. Okay, I'll leave it long. If it doesn't matter to you, long or short, fine. But if you are like, I feel a little more, you know, like pow when I have my hair cut short, then cut your hair short. Like if you are becoming a chameleon and trading yourself off for the happiness of this person, you have to be willing to go, let me stop this for just a minute and look at what I'm doing.
Amen. Amen.
You know.
That's good. Candy says it takes all the seasons to really know someone.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Alicia, we're happy you're just talking on the phone. Together, we're fire and ice. Yes, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, I love that. It's a great reminder that love isn't one thing. It isn't Disney, and it isn't what is good for someone else. We don't all have the same needs and wants. Amen. And a great way to wrap this. Mm-hmm. Teri, how can they get in touch with you?
I can be found at teripugh.com. It's TERIPUGH.com. Or I'm on Instagram all the time.
And we have the launch date show, and Teri keeps that up. And we are also on Main Street Today, the network, via YouTube. And wherever we are, just click like and click subscribe so you know that when we are here every Wednesday at noon Central Standard Time. You can reach out to me if you got an idea for a show as well. Devon O'Day at Gmail. And Tammy Pierce just joined us. Awesome show. So thank you, Tammy. Thank you all for joining us. We love when you join us here. And thanks, Lucretia.
37 minutes go.
I know. We just start talking, I feel like everybody starts relating. We did. Hey, remember, life doesn't
expand this and discuss expanding this for another 10 or 15 minutes at some point. But
absolutely, we are talking about doing a retreat.
Yes,
we're talking about doing a retreat. Yes. And I, there are a lot of people who say, no, it has to be only women. And I'm thinking, no, it has to be people. And we'll figure out a way, because there's a place that Teri is on the board for Pineal Ridge. And so we're thinking about that as a possible place in the future after all this crazy stuff gets out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm not opposed to doing, an all male and an all female. I think that a lot of times we have a lot of indifferences. I'll throw this out there, then I'll say my final words. But I feel like a lot of times we have, with our wounding, we have a lot of indifferences because the perpetrator in our wounds are usually the opposite sex, right? So we don't want to become real vulnerable, and it can be activating or triggering for us to do that. I have found over the past couple of years that I've been doing this work, that when we blend together, people who are comfortable blending together, there's an incredible amount of healing that goes through, that infuses through that. So, and people will do it. If it's male and female, people will either come or they won't come. And I mean, I'd love everybody to come, but got to be comfortable. So,
and the reason that I said that mixed genders was very important to me is I was at an event, and a group of women came forward that had been hurt by fathers, brothers, uncles, people of the opposite gender. And a man stood up and read an apology and took responsibility for everything. He was the man who said, I'm going to be the figurehead to say, I'm sorry. It was the most powerful thing, and to watch that healing. So you guys keep it here, and we're going to let you know if something happens and we get to plan a retreat in the near future. We don't know what's going to happen. Our health and everything's kind of crazy right now, but when we're through, we'll move toward that. How about it?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, you put the bow on it, my friend.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And from now until then, increase the peace.